Have you ever had to receive correction in your life? Our church had a ministry called the Psalm 91 Hiking Club. Each year, hikes of varying difficulties were arranged and groups would hike in the beautiful natural settings of the majestic Drakensberg Mountains, or the Tsitsikamma forests of the Eastern Cape, or the stark wonderland of the Fish River Canyon in Namibia. I was on a hike that summited Champagne Castle, a peak in the Drakensberg. As we were making our way along the route to the top, we missed a marker and started to climb into some dangerous cliffs where we might have fallen. Fortunately, someone below could see we were heading for trouble and shouted for us to turn back until we picked up the true path once again. In John's Gospel, he records the 7 I am statements of Jesus. The last one was given as Jesus and the 11 disciples, leaving the upper room after the Passover meal, were making their way to the Garden of Gethsemane. It was at this time that Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser." It is the only one of the titles where he immediately connects his Father into the imagery, and where we find both the Father and the Son as active agents in the depiction. Israel in Scripture was referred to as the vine that was planted by God in his vineyard. It became the national symbol for the nation of Israel. Yet the sad part of this imagery is that in most cases it highlights the nation's failure to be fruitful for God. In Isaiah 5 we read, "My beloved had a vineyard in a very fertile hill. He dug it out and cleared its stones, planted it with a choice vine, built a tower in the midst of it, and even cut out a winepress. He expected it to yield good grapes, but it yielded worthless grapes. So now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and the people of Judah, please judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done? Why then, when I expected it to yield good grapes, did it yield worthless grapes?" What Israel was unable to accomplish because they tried to do it in their own way and in their own strength, Jesus came to fulfill. He is the true vine. He is the true Israel. How can we know this? Well, in the messianic passage of Isaiah 49, we read that the Messiah will call Israel and Judah back to the Lord while at the same time being a light to the Gentiles. Listen to me, islands. Pay attention, peoples far away. Adonai called me from the womb. From my mother's belly he named me. He made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. He made me a polished arrow. He has hidden me in his quiver. He said to me, "You are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified." Israel as a nation was to be an example to the rest of the world, but failed to keep the ways of God. The Messiah would be the true Israel, who would fulfill all the requirements of the Torah perfectly. Another passage about Israel as a vine is quite interesting because it speaks of the exodus from Egypt. We read in Psalm 80, "You brought a vine out of Egypt. You drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared the ground for it. It took deep root and filled the land." How fitting that there is a prophecy from Hosea that says, "Out of Egypt I called my son," which is exactly what happened to Jesus, who was taken to Egypt from Bethlehem until it was safe enough to return to Israel. Jesus not only speaks of himself as the Messiah who came to save Israel, but identifies himself as the true Israel, the son called out of Egypt, the true vine, that unlike Israel that was barren, would produce fruit to his Father's glory. Now, the context of this passage is interesting because it is given as a comfort and an encouragement to the disciples. Earlier in the Passover celebrations, Jesus had told them that he was about to leave and return to the Father. They had no idea that this had to do with what was about to unfold. Jesus was leading them into his passion, where he would lay down his life and then take it up again. But for the disciples, they were heading into a traumatic experience. And so Jesus gives them this beautiful picture of the vine and the branches and the loving Father who is taking care of it all. In some way, this would even be an encouragement to Jesus, knowing that he would be like the branches being pruned. He would be likened to the unfruitful branches cut off from life and destined for fire on our behalf. All this was in the purpose and by the hand of a loving Father. If we read the passage from John 15, we may be tempted to read it in quite a harsh tone, but it's not that at all. Jesus is about to be taken from them, and they are going to abandon him in fear of their lives. They're going to lose perspective in the trauma of what was about to happen, to the point that all that Jesus had said to prepare them for this day will be forgotten in the quest for self-preservation. I remember being in a car accident with my gran and 2 sisters. I was taken to the church where we were headed on that Sunday morning, while the rest were taken to hospital for treatment. In my trauma, I lost perspective. All I could think about was how our dogs were going to be fed. With my parents overseas and my gran in hospital, who was going to feed our dogs? So the passage about the true vine speaks of unfruitful branches being taken away. That sounds a bit harsh until you understand that the Greek word used here could have a different meaning. Randall Smith writes, the term takes away is a translation of a Greek verb ahiro. The word can mean to take away, but can equally be interpreted as lift up. If you were to ask a vine dresser in Israel which was the meaning, it would be obvious. When a vine is wet on the bottom because it has grown downward to the earth, it requires a prop to keep air flowing underneath. Since the rest of the verse is about productivity, it makes very good sense that the verse should be translated in that way and not takes away. Taking away the branch ends it from productivity. Propping it up assists productivity. Let's say it clearly. God has the right to adjust your position in life to get you to produce well. So the branches attached to the vine were not discarded but lifted up. The next process is the pruning. Every branch that produces grapes in one season is pruned back to be able to bear again in the next season. Nobody should get to a place of complacency, but continue to be a disciplined and faithful follower of Jesus, allowing him to keep us humble from one season to the next. If the branches are left to grow, there will be too many leaves that will block out the sun. Pruning keeps us from pride, presumption, and self-reliance. Then in verse 3, the branches are cleaned. This is both the washing of the fruit that has grown from branches on the ground, as well as the stripping of the branches of unnecessary shoots and leaves in order to dress the vine for maximum fruitfulness with the right amount of sunshine and shade. Finally, we get to verse 6. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and is dried up. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. Remember that Jesus is about to take the disciples through quite a testing time. Judas has already left to betray the Messiah, a branch cut off and no more abiding in the vine. But what about the rest? They would run away as Jesus is arrested. Peter would deny him 3 times. They would lock themselves away in fear, not even believe the reports of his resurrection. But would they continue to abide in him? The tone is in relation to the rest of this loving passage and is for comfort and encouragement. Even for those who fail the Lord, there is correction. His dealings are always restorative, like the purging fire to burn up the dead wood. We've all been there. We've all strayed from the path, but he shouts to get us to stop, to turn around, and to reconnect with the right path. Finally, when an original vine is planted, it grows vertically up from the ground. Then it needs to be cut at a certain point so that the branches can spread sideways to give rise to the fruit-bearing shoots. The place where it is cut is called the crown. What a beautiful picture of the Messiah, our King, who grew up like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground, and then was cut off at the cross so that we could spread out with his gospel in his life-giving spirit and bear much fruit. All this is the hands-on, careful, and precise work of the Father, who lifts us up, cleans us, prunes us, and even restores us from our dead works, so that as we abide in Jesus, we honor him in our fruitfulness.
I am the vine, you are the branch, do not forsake me. Come and reside with me, and I'll show you my glory. Abide in me. I am the bread of life. With me you won't go hungry. I am the way, I am the truth. Receive my mercy. Abide in me. Stay close, don't let go. For the seed I plant brings peace that always grows. Stay close, don't let go. Abide in me. I am the first, I am the last, I hold the middle. I am the door, come enter into peaceful meadows. Abide in me. Stay close, don't let go. For the seed I plant brings peace that always grows. Stay close, don't let go. Abide in me. Stay close, don't let go. For the seed I plant brings peace that always grows. Stay close.